And welcome back to Music Free Static. I hope you're having a fabulous day. And, you know, everyone's got those things that they like, right? The type of music or movies or books or things that you're into, right? Right, and maybe you're into country or metal or K-pop or all that good stuff, right? Or you like rom-coms or action comedies and stuff. That's me right there. Rom-coms and action comedies. But you ever have those things where it's like, I love this and I don't know why? Right? So what got me thinking about this is I've been going through my digital music collection and updating my playlists and things like that. And part of this is because I noticed, hey, there's a song I really like. It's not on any of my playlists. How did this happen? So, right, I'm going through and updating my playlists. But as part of that, it was going through and it hit an album that I have not listened to in years. The album is Tales by Lisa Loeb and 9 Stories. Now, Lisa Loeb was a little bit, I'm not going to say she was totally a one-hit wonder, but definitely not somebody who really stuck around in the musical zeitgeist, right? But I really loved her song Stay, which is track 13 on that album. So I got the album so I, could get the song. This predated things like Amazon Music and stuff like that. And I remember listening to the album, and it's really amazing. Now, it's not a style of music that I'm really into most of the time. And there are only a couple of songs like Stay and Alone off that album that I can really just pull those up on their own and just listen to them. But the whole album is an experience, right? I don't know why, what I like about it, why I like it. There's just something about it that just speaks to me, and it's like, whoa, this is really cool, right? And I said, I don't know what it is. There's just something about it. There was another one. I had an album. It was Paul Simon's Greatest Hits or something like that, right? And it had, of course, You Can Call Me Al and stuff like that. But it also had a bunch of songs I'd never heard of. And Paul Simon is really chill, okay? I was very soft, I'm not even sure soft rock it would be able to describe it, but very mellow, most of these songs, right? And some of them I knew because when I was in marching band one year, we did a Paul Simon medley, I think, or for our show. So we played You Can Call Me Al and Bridge Over Troubled Waters and one other, I forgot what it was. But so we played a bunch of those things, right? And okay, they're fine. I mean, Bridge Over Troubled Water is a great song, really slow. And it's a song that if I listen to a lot, it gets really boring. Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. Paul Simon's Bridge Over Troubled Waters really gets old for me after a couple of listens. You Can Call Me Al is great. I could put that one on all day. But listening to that whole album on occasion, and said it was a greatest hits type albums, right? And I just loved doing that. Back when I was in college, I think I was a freshman in college. I threw that CD on, and I'm listening to it while I'm doing homework or something like that. My roommate comes in, he's like, "What are you listening to?" Because it was just really out of the norm for him. Now, admittedly, the music was older, okay, but I don't think he was totally into Paul Simon in general, right? But that's kind of the point. Is these are albums, that greatest hits by Paul Simon, Lisa Loeb's tales, which are just tendency breakers, I guess, if you want to put it that way. It's like, it's, I really, I, this is my genre. My genre is over here. I'm over here in dance pop and EDM land. But this album speaks to me. Okay. Now, I had a similar experience with the movie. Now, typically, as I mentioned earlier, my movies I tend to like are action comedies. The Marvels movies tend to fall into that. The MCU hits this pretty well. Star Wars, right, tends to hit these pretty well. They're action movies. They've got a little bit of humor in them. I don't need something like that's just a knee slapper funny, right? But a little bit of humor, a little bit of lightness, action adventure. The heroes, are heroic, right? I kind of like that in my movies, right? But that's so things tend to fall into those groups, and Lord of the Rings falls into it too. Things like Indiana Jones, right? Those movies tend to be right up my alley. So, or I like a really good, or sometimes a really bad comedy, right? Things like Spaceballs and Airplane and Robin Hood Men in Tights, right? These tend to be movies that just, yep, this is what I'm going to watch, and this is going to be fabulous, right? But I was in a hotel room at a conference several years ago, and yeah, it was one of those nights, okay, I'm here and I'm bored, right? Because it's at night. It's the night before, I think I can't remember if it was before the conference started or if it was the first night. There are no activities for the conference, or they've all ended, and I'm back to the hotel room, and I'm not quite ready to sleep, but I kind of want to put something on, right? I want to watch something, and I don't think I had my I usually travel with like a hard drive with a selection of movies and stuff, so that I have something I can watch while I'm on the road. This was not one of those days. This was one of those days where it's like, no, I'm whatever cable TV was in the hotel room, and I'm flipping channels. And I stumbled onto this movie. And now I'd missed the first I don't know, probably half hour of the movie. But it was the only thing interesting on. So I'm watching this. And it was just weird, but in a good way, right? It was really artsy, it was really, but it was leaned into drama, and it was a lot of romance. Like, what the heck is this movie that is so weird that I like so much? What is this thing? So I eventually found it, and it's a Wes Anderson movie called Moonrise Kingdom, and I was shocked, right? It was because it's like this weird artsy style. Wes Anderson has a very distinct way of approaching movies, and the way this was shot, the way it was, the way it was acted, the whole thing just spoke to me. It's like, I love this. This is weird. I have no idea why I like this movie. Even now, it's hard for me to describe sometimes why I like it. Okay, it's a love story, and I'm a romantic at heart. Okay, there's a reason rom-coms tend to be on my list, because I love love. I love that whole concept of romance and people finding each other, right? And I love movies like Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail and IQ and, right, back in the height of romantic comedies, right? I love all that stuff. And Moonrise Kingdom is a romance. It's also a story of people finding family. And I love all of that. But Moonrise Kingdom is such a weird movie that it's like I can't. If you describe it to me, heck, just describing it here, I do not know why I like this movie. But the cast is great. You've got Tilda Swinton and Bruce Willis and Edward Norton, right? Shoot, Bill Murray for some reason, right? And it's all right. So you've got some great actors here, but that good actors alone don't make a movie, right? For example, the movie Nothing But Trouble, can't stand it. I got halfway through the movie. My dad and I were looking at each other like, how much more of this movie is left? And how is it so bad and unfunny when it stars Tom Hanks and John Candy and Dan Aykroyd? And right, how can this movie be so bad? But Moonrise Kingdom is not that. And it is just, it's just one of those movies that comes out of nowhere. And I love it. Right? Now, I mentioned poetry earlier, and I love when language is well used. For those of you who watch my streams, never understand what this is, okay? I or listen to my podcast, right? I'm not the type of person who can dive into the English language and pull out gems of phrases and stuff, okay? But I love reading like The Lord of the Rings because the way Tolkien uses the English language is amazing. Okay. And I have the same thought sometimes when reading or watching Shakespeare. It's like he's doing things with language that really is amazing. Okay. Now, yeah, there are times when I read The Lord of the Rings and it's like, you know what? Maybe I'll skip the poetry today. But the way Tolkien builds his worlds and does it with language in a way that very rarely feels like there's a lot of exposition, but suddenly you realize there was a lot of exposition. And you feel the whole weight and history of Middle Earth, even though that there isn't a lot of times. I mean, there are definitely times where they drop into, oh, here's the lay of Luthien. There we go. It's like Lillian. That's not right. But for the most part, you can just kind of feel the weight of the world and the history as you go through that story, and I love it. But that said, I don't particularly like poetry. Okay? Now, there are some poems that are better than others, but for the most part, I don't care about the tree, right? I don't, there might be a verse or two, like, okay, the verse about a road less traveled. Okay, that's cool. On the other hand, every once in a while, there will be a poem that just hits me upside of the head and says, you will like this. And I looked at some of it and was like, why? But no. So, for example, the poem El Dorado by Edgar Allan Poe is one of those that hit me. Okay. Now, I found it in a weird way. I was watching a movie. It's a John Wayne movie. It's an old Western, as you would expect from a John Wayne movie. He did do things that weren't Westerns, but obviously he was known for Westerns. But he did a movie called El Dorado. And one of the characters quotes and often misquotes this poem. The poem El Dorado by Edgar Allan Poe. And this was a poem, it hit me so hard, I actually memorized it. Now, it's been a while, so I had to go look it up again, but it's fairly short. But I'm just going to read it, okay? Yeah, you may skip ahead 30 seconds or something to skip the poem, but I love this. And I don't know why, okay? I'm going to tell you straight up. I love this poem, but I'm not entirely sure why I love this poem, okay? But the poem goeth thusly. Gaily bedight, a gallant knight, in sunshine and in shadow, had journeyed long, singing a song in search of El Dorado. But he grew old, this knight so bold, and o'er his heart of shadow fell as he found no spot of ground that looked like El Dorado. And as his strength failed him at length, he met a pilgrim's shadow. Shadow, said he, where can it be, this land of El Dorado? Over the mountains of the moon, down the valley of the shadow, ride, boldly ride, the shade replied, if you seek for El Dorado. Now, I have no idea why I like that poem, okay? And maybe it's just as they're talking about in the movie, and Mississippi is talking about, you know, as he's trying to explain why he likes it. John Wayne's, it's like, so what, it makes you want to ride, boldly ride, you know, some sort of snide, sarcastic remark. And maybe that's it. And like a lot of Poe's poetry, there's a layer of darkness to it. This one also, it feels like there's a ray of hope in the darkness. But I'm not entirely sure exactly if that was intended. Maybe that's just my own interpretation. I don't know. But this poem just jumps out at me and says, love me. And I do. Right? Okay. You know, and there are so many things. Like, I don't care about poetry. On the other hand, I love The Raven. Now, I'm not going to read The Raven, but Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, you know, once upon a midnight dreary, as I pondered weak and weary, right? I tried memorizing The Raven. I did at one point. I have forgotten most of it. Okay. Those call out to me. Now, The Raven does for a different reason. Okay. Because The Raven it's a story of a man's descent into grief and madness. Okay. Which could be fun, right? Don't get me wrong, right? Who doesn't want to descend into grief and madness? Right. But as the character, the narrator, I suppose, in The Raven, is grieving for the loss of Lenore, he sees this raven, hears this knock. The dude is, I think he's suicidal, right? And I think it's because here's the love of his life has died, and he is falling down that well of grief. But the poem is amazing. I said there's a reason why The Raven has stuck around in sort of the human zeitgeist for so long, right? It's because it is so amazingly well done. But these are probably the two poems that I actually care about. I've read a couple of others that's okay, that's cool. I liked that. I haven't gone back to read them again. They haven't really stuck with me in the way that these two have, right? And so it's one of those things. So I got thinking about all of this yesterday as I was sitting down to start the outline for the podcast, right? And often these podcasts are triggered by something I've been thinking about that week, okay? Or like last week I talked about Star Wars, The Acolyte, because I love talking Star Wars and the show just ended. So of course I was going to talk about The Acolyte. Others are like, this is a movie I love. And yeah, it's an older movie. So I do a really late movie review. And that was Forbidden Planet a couple of weeks ago. Or I was thinking about Pride. Okay. Now I was thinking about it. So we had Pride Month. Right, and it wasn't related to that. It was a couple weeks earlier. But as I was thinking about, okay, what I'm going to write, when I'm going to do this podcast, and it's going to fall on the beginning of Pride Month, and I'm going to be talking about the dangers of pride as an emotion and humility as being awesome. It's like, okay, I want to talk about that, but I'll table that. So I put that aside to talk about later. And I did. You can go back and listen to that. But this was one of those things that's like, all right, I'm going to sit down. I've been working on this management leadership course for the last month. Okay. And the coursework is ended. Now I'm just working on the capstone project, and that requires a lot of self-reflection and understanding of, hey, what did I learn and all of this stuff, right? So I was going to write a podcast on reflection and all of that good stuff, right? And then Lisa Loeb hits my playlist, and I said, nope, all of that's out the window, because I needed to talk about right this weird thing that I like, that I have no idea why I like it, right? And I know I've listened to other music that kind of fits that same genre, and I don't like it, right? There are other movies that I've watched that kind of fall into that artsy drama. It's like, yeah, I don't care. But Moonrise Kingdom is amazing, and I will watch that frequently, or at least regularly. I'll put that on, at least once a year, or sometimes, more often than that. But in fact, I'll probably end up watching it this weekend because it's been on my mind. I'm also tempted to go find a few other Wes Anderson movies, but I don't know. Maybe he's just that weird gem like Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, that's like, yep, you don't like poetry, but you like my poetry, right? Is that maybe? I don't know. It's just weird, and I love it. And that's the thing. There are so many things that are just weird and out of the norm of what we normally like, that just hits us. Now, part of this is a encouragement to, hey, sometimes step out of your lane once in a while and just see what else is out there. Okay. It's one of the things like, what's it? High School Musical, right? The first High School Musical is okay. It's your cheesy teen love story, right? But it's also a story of cliques and expectations, right? You're a jock, and that's what defines you, okay? And because you're a jock, you can't be into things like theater or cooking, right? No, that's just wrong. You got to stick to the status quo, I think is one of the songs, right? You're in science. You can't possibly be into hip-hop dance. That's just not right, right? That's the whole premise, is blowing all of that out of the water, okay? And so, yeah, reaching out and listening to some things that maybe you're not totally into, or catching those fringes, right? So, as another example, I've always liked dance pop, okay? And I remember when I grew up in the 80s, right? And so there's all the 80s hair bands. Most of them I didn't like. I liked Bon Jovi, okay? But Bon Jovi was less metal and more rock, and I was into that, okay? Van Halen was more metal, was not a fan, okay? Metallica, same thing, not a fan. But one of the things that was really catching me was the early stages of rap and hip hop. So it was, okay, you had DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Fresh Prince was hit or miss, but he had some good stuff. Will Smith in his early days, good stuff there. But things like Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, the Good Vibrations, and CNC Music Factory, and a bunch of that stuff I was into. And as I've aged, right, I still love that high energy dance, right? And it doesn't matter if it's necessarily dance pop or party rock or EDM. I want something with it that's got a good melody and a good bass, and something that really drives some energy. And I found some amazing artists like Alan Walker and the Fat Rat and all that stuff because of Pandora, which just starts feeding stuff. But I remember listening to these things one day, and it feeds me this song that's in Korean. It's like, what the heck? And I'm listening to this because I'm working and I didn't quite feel the need to immediately skip the song. It's like, what is this weird mix of Korean and English, and it's poppy and it's amazing. It was Blackpink. And I realized that in fact Blackpink was in fact in my area, and I fell hard into um, the fringes of K-pop. Now, I'm not going to say I'm into all of K-pop, right? But a lot of that high energy dance, right, that I love sits over there in K-pop land. So, and it's like, whoa, where did this come from? And so yeah, so there's some Girls' Generation and Card and obviously Blackpink, and this is cool. So stepping outside of your lane sometimes and finding those things that are just sort of weird that you wouldn't necessarily think you'd like, and boom, now it's one of your favorite things ever. Okay. Or at least one of those things that, yes, I like this, I'm going to come back to it. And yeah, it's just bizarre. I have no idea why I like this, but I like this. And, it's why I think I have such a wide range of genres on my music playlist, right? Obviously, I've got all of that dance stuff I was talking about before. Britney Spears and Kesha, and yes, and Blackpink and Marky Mark, and right, Alan Walker and Zedd and all of this stuff, right? But I also have Garth Brooks and Brad Paisley and Elvis Presley and right. Yeah, I do have one song by Van Halen on my playlist, right? Right Now was a good one. Right, so I've got all that, but I'm also into I like Igor Stravinsky, and Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov. If you want your romantic era orchestral, love it. It is amazing, right? How did you end up with liking all this? You get exposed to it, right? And yeah, there are some things I'm not into most dramas, right? And I've seen a few just over the years, but every once in a while one hits me. It's like, yeah, I need a drama in my life. And so there are things like Mr. Holland's Opus or Moonrise Kingdom, for that matter, which I don't know. It also tends to fall into that comedy side too, because it is kind of fun. There's some funniness to it. There's some humor in the way that movie's portrayed, but it's cool having this sort of wider range of stuff, right? Because yeah, you could live your life in your lane, and that's cool, right? Like what you like. I'm not going to tell you that's bad. But sometimes stretching out a little bit, you could find something that you had no clue was there, and now you love it. And maybe that's the message I've got today. Is I'm talking about all of this weird stuff that just came at me from weird directions, right? Lisa Loeb's Stay was on the radio all the time. And, when I picked up that album, as I said, there are only a couple of tracks off it that I'm just, yep, I'm into these. But the whole album is a weird experience that I'm just here for. So yeah, maybe take a chance on some things. But here, as an exit question for you, what is a piece of art that speaks to you that you never would have expected? Whether it's a song or a movie or poetry or a literal piece of art, right? I'm not a huge fan of paintings and artwork. The Starry Night is amazing, okay? There's a lot of stuff that Van Gogh does that I could take or leave, but The Starry Night, man, I love that painting. So let me know, what's something that you had no inkling of and that you normally wouldn't have been down for, that just, yep, this showed up in my life and I am loving it. And just drop something in the comments and let me know, because I'm fascinated by some of those weird things. But that'll do it for me today. Until next time, be excellent to each other. And this is Music Free Static signing off.